Morning, everyone. My name is Nick Kern, and I'm the founder and CEO of Numbers for Nonprofits. I'd like to welcome you to our last Breakfast with Benefits for this series. These informational sessions are one of the many ways we bring the nonprofit community together and know you'll take great information back to your organizations. Numbers for Nonprofits helps nonprofits manage money with mission by taking care of all of the numbers of your organization. Day-to-day accounting, monthly financials, assistant with budgets, and preparing for outside audits are just a few of the ways we help nonprofit leaders so they can focus on making the world a better place. If you'd like to talk with me about how we can help nonprofits, you can schedule time on my calendar by visiting our website at numbers4nonprofits.com. That's numbers with the number 4 nonprofits.com. Today's session has broken our record for most RSVPs with nearly 200 people signed up. We've recruited some rock star presenters to share their thoughts on grants and how nonprofits can work towards securing funding for their important work. Thank you to Angela, Jenni, and Maggie for giving your time to share knowledge with those connected to the nonprofit community. We will be recording this session today, and at the conclusion of today's session, we will award a gift card to Amazon through a random drawing. Without further ado, I will pass the baton to Kristin Rucinski from our team. She manages our non-financial nonprofit consulting, which is a growing piece of Numbers for Nonprofits work in the nonprofit space. Thank you for recruiting today's talent and for being the moderator for Breakfast with Benefits today.
Thanks, Nick. Good morning, everybody. Just real fast, I was telling somebody the other day, one thing I love about working at Numbers for Nonprofits is just like the diversity of nonprofits that we work with. There's large organizations and small organizations and newer ones and more established ones. And the missions range from arts to housing to seniors to early education to health to mental health to racial justice and everything in between. So it's super cool. And looking over today's RSVP list for who RSVP'd for this, I saw that same sort of diversity in organizations, size and newness and missions. So thank you everybody for making time for this. And no matter where you are in your nonprofit, I think the one common denominator is funding, right? Whether you're new or old or big or small, you need money to sort of do your mission. And so we're super lucky to have 3 panelists here representing different funding organizations. And I promise you that not every funder's priorities on this call are going to align directly with all of your missions. So we've sort of intentionally designed the questions to be more broad, and hopefully then you all leave here with a few nuggets, a few ideas, a few insights, new perspectives, or even encouragement to strengthen your work going forward. So this is how the next 45 minutes or so will go. We'll start with some super brief intros, and then I will sort of moderate 7 questions with our panelists. And then we expect to have some time at the end for open questions from people on the call. So I have a couple of requests. If you have a clarifying question as the speaker is speaking, you can go ahead and put that in the chat as we're going. And I'm going to do my best to watch the chat. And I have my coworker, my teammate Ella, is also helping with that. If you have a brand new question that's not something that they're talking about, please save that in the end so the chat doesn't get cluttered up. And then my last request is that try not to have your questions be like too specific about your own organization, but make it more broad so that everybody on the call can get something out of this. So that is how we will spend the next 45 or 50 minutes. Like Nick said, we'll end with our drawing, our lucky winner for a $25 gift card. So with that, if we don't have any questions, let's go ahead and start with some brief intros. So you've seen their personal bios on the invite. So I've asked Angela and Jenni and Maggie to actually talk a little bit more about the organizations that they are representing. So why don't we start with Jenni, and you could talk a little bit about Oscar Rennebohm Foundation.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here this morning, bright and early. So Oscar Rennebohm Foundation was founded in 1949, and it still focuses on kind of 4 main mission areas, which are healthcare, research, human services, and education. We only focus on Dane County. We only give grant funds within Dane County. So it's very specific in terms of where we fund. And then within those 4 areas, we tend to kind of maybe make a focus area that lasts for several years. And right now we're designating a bunch of our grant funding towards older adult supports and services.
Perfect. And Jenni is on the Numbers for Nonprofits Advisory Board, so gives quite a bit of her time every quarter at those meetings. So thank you again. And Angela, how about you talking about Madison Community Foundation?
Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. Madison Community Foundation has been around since 1942. We are the community's community foundation. We have a lot of people know us through our fund holders, whether it be donor advised funders or 1/3 of our fund holders are actually nonprofits. We have various grant cycles. The one that is the most popular is our community impact. And we have 5 focus areas: arts and culture, environment, community development, learning, and organizational capacity building. And we also have our field of interest funds, which is now an open process on our website. You can learn more information there. And we are working very closely with our committee and our board to see what the future holds. A lot of change here at MCF and what our focus areas may be in the future. So stand by. We'll see. Thank you.
Perfect. And I know you have your big annual event tonight, which makes this a long day for you. So thank you extra for being here as well. Maggie, how about you?
Yeah, good morning. Happy Tuesday, everyone. So my name is Maggie Pascaly. I'm the executive director of the Sub-Zero Group Foundation. So if you're not familiar with Sub-Zero, we are a luxury appliance company based out of Madison, Wisconsin. We are an 80-year-old family-run, family-owned company. They have had a foundation since 1997. I am the inaugural executive director, so started here about 2.5 years ago. As part of that transition into this role, I'm really thinking about a strategy and structure around their charitable giving. So we predominantly have 3 focus areas, which include juvenile diabetes, which connects back to our founding story, food security, which makes a lot of sense given the products that we sell, and community centers. And the way that we define community centers is really thinking about the concept around lifelong health, fitness, food, education. So like Oscar Rennebohm, we predominantly fund in Dane County. We do have a large facility in Goodyear, Arizona, so we do a little bit of funding in Phoenix, and a new facility in Cedar Rapids. We're also doing some charitable giving there.
Perfect. Thank you. And I feel like you're a sounding board for a lot of people in the community. So just thank you also for giving another hour of your time today. Let's keep it with you, Maggie, while you're in the hot seat. We're going to start kind of with start broad and on a positive note, looking for things that kind of stand out in proposals in a positive way. So what sort of consistently resonates with funders regardless of the specific funding source? Like, what are you looking for? What qualities in organizations are you looking for? All 3 of you, but we'll start with Maggie.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, right, like the alignment within our focus areas. And with Sub-Zero, we don't necessarily have a proposal or an application. A lot of where that's happening is at a conversation. So traditionally, I'm meeting with an executive director or a development director. And frankly, you want people to know, the passion of the work that has to be there, right? But I'm very operational. I like to be able to see this from point A to point Z. And if you can't help me walk through the process of how and I don't need to know how every dollar is going to be spent, but if your strategy, your vision is to expand your program or serve the amount of people that you're doing, help me understand what that looks like. So that's something when I can really better understand and if you will, flow through the process of how, whether it's a program or an initiative or the organization works, that's something that's really resonates with me, that then I get in and I can ask some nitty-gritty questions. So yeah, that's off the top of my head.
That's helpful. Jenni, Angela, either of you can jump in.
Sure, I'll jump in. And we also fund in Dane County as well. I forgot to mention that. I am looking at, it has become so, I guess, competitive, and everyone's looking for funding, particularly in these times, that I can't meet with everyone that I want to, that I used to meet with. So we've added office hours, open office hours, which can be found on our website. So we can talk about things. Nonprofits can meet other nonprofits, and there's synergy in that. I'm taking limited meetings. And when I am meeting or listening or even meeting someone that wants, hey, we're at an event and they want to run something past me. If it's a unique idea, how did it come about? Is this something the community really needs and wants? Don't go chasing dollars. And I think that's something that I see often. And as Maggie mentioned, alignment in our focus areas and being honest with yourself and the funder about the need. And if you have some data to back it up, have you talked to the community? How do you know this is something that is really needed? And if it's an existing program and you're at A and you want to go to B, is that realistic? Even if funding, because oftentimes we're not able to completely, to totally fund your request. So are you still able to do the work? And is it sustainable? That's another question that, stand out. What's the plan?
I would reinforce what Angela just said about chasing dollars. A great example is like a preschool is adding older adults so that it fits in with our older adult focus. Like that's not going to work for us. And also with kind of aligning with our mission, as Maggie said. So for our process, though, we really encourage people to reach out to me prior to doing anything else, though, because sometimes I don't want to waste your time as grant writers or staff members at your nonprofit. And I do appreciate just an email or a Zoom or a coffee meeting, depending on what the project is, just to introduce it to us. And so that's usually very helpful to me to see if it's in alignment. And sometimes we may discourage you, not because it's not a great idea or a really important program, but because we have very limited dollars left in our budget for this particular year. And it's great to have an introduction, but maybe we should talk next year when we have, more opportunity for funding. I think the other thing I would say is when people write in their either letters of inquiry or their proposals, we do kind of both of those as part of our process. I need the who, what, where, when. Like I need to know how much money you need, for how long, and what's the impact going to be. I just need it really simple because that is what my board is looking for. We don't give you a lot of space to write a lengthy proposal. So really just giving me this is the program, this is what we want to accomplish, this is what the money is for and what it will fund. And I think Angela also mentioned sustainability. Unfortunately, we are not a grant maker that provides consistent funding year after year after year. I wish we were, giving operating support or really had the funds to be a long-term consistent funder. Unfortunately, we just don't have that kind of grant making capacity to do that. So we like to come in, make a difference. I mean, a great example is like something at a healthcare organization where we could come in and fund a particular thing that's going on, but at the same time, they're working with Medicaid in order to get approval so that in the future, these services could be covered by Medicaid. So that's an example of something like we'd like to fund, get off the ground, can fund for a little bit, but then the organization is actually working on making that sustainable for the long term.
Yeah, that's great. I definitely heard all three of you talk about alignment there, which is good. Angela, your office hours, I personally have used those. That was a genius idea. So yeah, that was all super helpful. And Jenni, your comment about like the timing, I've also personally experienced that where you might start a conversation, but you need to keep the potential funder informed and what's going on, and you might not see money for another 6 or 12 months based on what you said with the funders budget themselves or just the timing, or you need to really get that point A to point Z, I think is what Maggie said. So that all everything you said makes a lot of sense. Let's keep it with you, Jenni, and we'll kind of go backwards, but obviously all three of you could jump in whenever. So kind of the opposite then. What are kind of some common challenges you see, like pitfalls or patterns that tend to weaken a proposal? Or in your case, Maggie, you said it's mostly a conversation, not really a proposal. What are just sort of things that kind of give you pause, or if there are any common themes around that?
I mean, I do think, sometimes people just submit stuff and it's like their standard thing that they just submit, and it wastes your time and it's also wasting my time. So like, I don't like it when people do that and they don't like look at our website and look at what our mission areas are, or look at our recommendation that you contact us first. It kind of starts off honestly on a bad note if you're just doing that and you really haven't taken a moment to look at the information that we provide and put out there. I think the other thing that we spend a lot of time looking at is the organization's 990, their audit, and I think you will bring this up later. But I think, having good, solid financials really does matter to us very much. We want to see an organization that's operating within the amount of funding that it has. I think my board raises issues when they look at they don't look at 990s. I look at 990s and I bring information to them about the 990. But, if staff salaries are exorbitant compared to what the budget is of the organization, like we really do look at that. And we look at if there's deficits over multiple years, and we look at if they have loans, for example, that they're not able to be paying back in a timely manner. So like we really look at all of that. And so having a good, solid financial foundation is really important for an organization. So I would say those are the couple of things that come top of mind to me.
That's good. And yeah, we'll dive into financials. I have to, right, with numbers for nonprofits. But Maggie or Angela, anything to add to what Jenni said there? Any other kind of pitfalls or patterns that you see that weaken proposals or conversations?
Yeah, I'd like to elaborate too on what Jenni said. I think listening goes both ways, right? SS funders need to sit down and listen to organizations, better understand community need, what your organization is specifically doing in community. But it needs to go both ways. You need to understand too what areas we're going to fund in. And when you don't listen to us, that is like, right? It's the frustrating part of you're just submitting a proposal and trying to shoehorn something in. It wastes your time, it wastes our time. So I just wanted to expand on that. So make sure that listening goes both ways. And I will say, if I'm not listening to you, call me out on that. So I will call that out. The other thing, you'd be surprised how many organizations, when I'm talking to them about potential funding, and I have to say, what's the goal? If you're funded, what's the goal? What's end goal? A lot of organizations can't necessarily articulate that. So I think that can sometimes be a common pitfall as well, of making sure you understand that holistic strategy and how all of these pieces come together to make that a holistic strategy. Because when I'm going to my board, right, and I'm saying, hey, here's an organization, here's the funding that they want, here's what the funding is going to do, right? This is ultimately what we're trying to achieve, and how that fits into our mission. So make sure that you can articulate that.
Love what both of you have said, and I would just add again about chasing the dollars and alignment. If it doesn't fit our areas, we're not going to fund it. I also get a lot of, well, which focus area received the less number of LOIs or proposals, and which one should I apply for? We can't make that decision for you. That's a decision staff and board, you all need to make that. And the other question I get a lot of a challenge is, how much should we apply for? Let's see. You can look at our website and see past years grants. Not saying that that's always going to happen that way, because it depends on what we receive and the total number of requests. But you can get an idea. Applying, we're not a starter funder. We want you to have 1/3 of the funding raised before you come to us. We want to see that. And we also are not going to award you $1 million when we have $1.4 million to award. So again, thinking about time, the time you're putting in, the time your staff may be putting in, and the time that you're asking funders and their boards to put in. Let's just be realistic.
I just want to add to what Angela was saying about other funders too. So you were talking about like kind of being at a third, but I do like being aware of other grant makers that you've gone to, whether it's for this request or for other support that you get. But I think it's helpful to me communicating with my board of other funders that you are working with in the community, or whether it's municipal dollars, county dollars, state dollars. It's very helpful for me to have a good picture about that. So I would just add that too.
Absolutely. And as I'm sorry, Maggie.
Oh, go, Angela, go.
As past fundraisers ourselves, individual donors. That's important.
Yes.
And that's something I always ask to help me understand the diversification of your funding, right? What are your revenue sources? How does that break out by percentage? It just gives me a better understanding. Are you solely reliant on federal funding, right? And that now you're trying to diversify given everything that's going on, right? There are things that explain why your revenue model is the way it is, but it really helps provide added context. I'll also just allow, highlight to what Jenni said. I always ask what other organizations are in, how much are they giving? It just gives context to my board to better understand who's all contributing to this program, initiative, capital campaign, whatever it might be.
I also just want to bounce off one other thing that Angela said, where I would say maybe we're a little bit different, is I do want to talk to you about how much you should request. So sometimes I think people come in at a different level than I would recommend. And so if we've said yes, go ahead, submit a letter of inquiry. I am always available to give feedback on, you talk about what the total budget is, you talk about what other funders you've gone to, and what requests would be appropriate for my board to look at. So I do want to give you feedback on that. I think it puts you in the right range for what our board expects to look at.
Helpful. We have 2 questions in the chat. And Monty, we'll get to yours actually when we talk about financials in just a couple of questions. But Anne asked, she said, one of you mentioned disclosing individual donors, and kind of, can you expand on what you're looking for there? Like, are you actually looking for names, amounts? Or are you just looking for kind of the idea that there's diversified revenue? Can you say a little bit more?
Sure, I mentioned that. And in our program budget, we have a line for individual donors. It does not mean you need to disclose who those donors are. We do not want you to do anything that could upset the donor or cause any harm. So no, we're just looking for amounts. And again, as Maggie and Jenni have mentioned, that you are diversifying your funding stream.
Great. Hopefully that helps answer that question. All right, we'll keep it with you, Angela. We're going to move to talk about impact, since I know you have the community impact area. So we'll start with you here. And I specifically know newer organizations might not, or even like a more established organization that's starting a new program, they're not really sure how to talk about impact because they haven't done it yet. I know that's like a common challenge on the side of people requesting money. But just in general, like across different types of funders, like what actually matters when it comes to like how the nonprofit can be communicating impact to the potential funder? What stands out to all 3 of you there?
Great question. I like to say, do what you say and say what you want to do. And what I mean by that is, if you're a newer organization, I want to know, how did you come up with this? And what do you want the impact to be? You should at least know, in a perfect world, because I'll ask this, in a perfect world, what would this program do? What would the impact be? What would be your long-term and short-term goals and outcomes? Because we're going to talk about outcomes. We're going to talk about logic models. We're going to talk about those things as we work with Dr. Annalie Good from the Wisconsin Center for Education and Research, with those who move on in our process, So even if you don't all the way know yet, we can work with you on that. And hopefully as you do, this will help you not only with a grant with MCF, but other funders as well. Being realistic with the impact, with your grant and with the timeline. Life happens, so we need to plan for that too. And if something comes up, and this is something I think we all can agree on, communicate with us on what is going on. We want to know. We want updates. We look at annual reports. And if you're working with partners that do have impact, have you talked to others that are in those similar fields that have done programs that are similar, particularly if you're new? What have you learned from them? So doing those things and having some focus groups or conversations. What is the data behind starting this new program? So that's how I want to get to the impact. But first, we need to know why are we doing this? Why do you want to do this?
Thanks, Maggie or Jenny.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it goes back to the goal. What is the goal? And it's a conversation, right? Every organization is going to be a little different, whether this is a new initiative and you haven't started tracking any type of data yet, but ultimately, like Angela said, what are you trying to get to? A food pantry, right? You have pretty set things that you're tracking. So any funding that we provide, when I'm talking about impact, I'm requesting, hey, let's meet, 6 months or a year from now, right? And let's talk about what you were able to accomplish over those years, or over that year, over that time period. But having that conversation, I think, up front and better understanding what is the strategy, what is the goal, what are you already tracking, and starting from there as far as an impact measure.
And I would just add a couple things is, one of the things we fund are some capital campaigns. So it's really helpful to get updates on timelines for groundbreaking or hard hat tours, or just if there's delays and why there's delays. And so it's just really helpful. And it's just a little email or phone call. Like, I don't need an in-depth report. I just need an update. We also do capacity building, where sometimes it might be hiring staff members. And I've had organizations where it's like, oh, we hired this person, but they were part-time and then they left and now the position's vacant. Now we have to hire again. And, it's okay that things don't go like perfectly smoothly from what you put in proposal. I would just rather be informed about what's going on with that organization. I think occasionally I've had an organization where it's like, where maybe they weren't doing with the dollars what they said they were going to do with the grant money that we provided. And it's helpful because I reached out to them, we found that out, and then there was some modifications that we could make. But like finding that out at the end of the grant cycle usually means that you won't be getting another grant again. Because it just kind of like, we gave you a fiscal responsibility and you use the money differently than what you said you were going to do, and it's restricted money. So I think it's just really important to communicate that. I think the other thing I would just say about impact is, like, for example, we do a scholarship program. We give money to the nursing school and they provide scholarships to nursing students. And sometimes people go overboard, where like I get a stack this big of notes from undergraduate students or graduate students who got scholarships. And like, I don't want to put that burden on an organization to do that work, or on those individuals who should be studying. They're probably also working and raising a family at the same time they're studying. Like, we don't want to put that burden. A couple anecdotes in the report that you send once a year is all I need. I don't need you to go to these outer limits to produce results like that. I need you to respect the fact that you're serving people with this grant. Just give me a couple anecdotal stories, and that's all I really need to share with my board.
I'm glad you mentioned that it doesn't have, I mean, as long as there's communication, you mentioned it doesn't have to go perfectly. And Angela, I think you said, in your ideal world or in your perfect world, this is what would happen. And I think some people get nervous about, if I say this is what we think will happen or want to happen, and then it doesn't happen exactly like that, then we're, then we're going to get a red mark or no funding again. So I'm glad that you just sort of hopefully lowered some anxiety around like it doesn't have to be perfect, but just communicate when there are changes.
And I think we're all, you can talk to us about it. As was mentioned, if we need to make an amendment, we can talk about that. If we need to adjust the timeline, we can talk about that, but also be honest. As was mentioned, if we need to, not that we want to, but I know for us, if we need to rescind a grant because you just can't do it, it's okay. We can, and then we can talk about that. And if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. So we have rescinded grants, and it does open those funds up for us to put it back in the pool. And if you want to apply again, we can do that. But being realistic about what you can and can't do, and hiring capacity building is specifically one of those where an organization may think in a year we'll have the development director hired. They're going to raise $500,000. Let's go through. Take a step back. There's a lot of development jobs open, and let's get the person hired on board. They have to build relationships, and this is one I know. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. Let's take a step back. So being realistic about how long the hiring process may actually take.
Yeah, good.
Can I add something, Kristin? So I know Jenni said like she gets a stack like this big, right, of all these letters from students. Make sure you're talking to your partner in advance, right? Like when you're initially launching this grant, be like, hey, we'd love to share some stories. Does a couple make sense? But make sure you're getting that agreement before versus at the end, right? I know there are some organizations that want that stack, and just make sure you have that better understanding too before you get in.
Okay, that might have answered. We had a question in the chat of what kind of stories, if any, do you want to hear? Like, do you want I feel like a lot of funders used to always ask, like, give us your success story, or I mean, sometimes this work you could do good work, but not like end in a total success, or how do you define success? Or so like kind of what kind of stories are you looking for to answer the question in the chat?
Well, I would just say it just has to relate to the grant. Yeah. Like it just, if you're hiring a staff member, it's like, here's the bio of the staff member. We're super excited that this person is coming. Or here's the, one of the people who got the scholarships, and this is what that person, how it made a difference in their life to get a scholarship. It's just be really specific. Like we don't need generalized stories. Like just be specific about how it had an impact on your organization.
All right, one more from the chat, and then we'll move on. If you could ban one buzzword from proposals forever, what would it be?
I have an answer to that. Passion. Please do not use that word. Please, it is not, I do not want to hear that you have a passion about your organization, a passion about this program. And if you put that in your cover letter, I will also not talk to you. So please don't use that word. It is inappropriate for a business.
That could be the biggest takeaway of the day. How about you, Maggie or Angela?
I mean, touche, right? Like when you're talking about your work, I want you to have that passion, but
sorry, this is just my own personal problem, but I just think it's like such an inappropriate business word. We can debate this over lunch on another day, Maggie.
Right, after that, I don't think you just dropped the mic. I don't know what else we can say at this point.
All right, we can move on. If something comes to you, you can put it in the chat. All right, so let's move on to relationships, right? There's a lot of talk between like, what does a strong relationship look like between a nonprofit and a funder? How much communication is too much or too little, or how are other ways that, Jenni, I think you mentioned going on tours if it's like a capital campaign. Like, what are ways to kind of continue to build that relationship besides just asking for money and then reporting on it? I don't care who starts here. How about Maggie? Yeah.
I would argue all three of us, right, are out in the community quite a bit. I encourage you, come up, like let's chat, like what's going on. If you come up to me, I'm gonna be like, how's everything going at X? Like, what are you excited about? So I encourage you, come chat with us. I think that helps build a relationship. I know that folks have already touched on this a little bit. But for me, if they're, I don't, not necessarily red flags, I'd rather have you be forthcoming with the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? If there are challenges that you're having, and I know we'll get into 990s, if there's something on your 990, come out with it, right? Like, we're looking at the 990s. I'd rather have you be forthcoming with it versus trying to hide it and not tell mom and dad. And to me, when you can be forthcoming, it helps build that trust and build that relationship. So yeah, other thoughts from Jenni or Angela?
I love that. Also, I would add to that, if there's going to be staff changes, I don't want to hear it in the streets. It would be in a perfect world, we'd find out from you, particularly if we have an active grant or we have a close relationship. Just let us know what's going on, who's going to be, interim, if we need to talk about the grant. Just knowing what's going on is great. The tours, love tours. Have a couple coming up real soon, this week and next week. And those are very, very helpful to see. And if we can bring other staff, or board members, those are nice. We like to have some of our community impact committee meetings or board meetings in different locations. And it's nice to see how the money was spent, especially for capital campaigns. And we're in the building now that, so many funders help support. That's always a win. As Maggie said, we don't fight. We really don't. We're humans just like everyone else. Come talk to us. I would say respecting timelines too is important to the relationship. Don't wait to 429 at the day of, or 11:59 the day of. The great thing is Jenni and I, Rennebohm and MCF, we use the same system. So go apply. We know when you're in there, we know what you're doing. So that helps some that we use the same database and information. We're done with paper. So get your information in. Tech issues happen every day. So please don't wait to the last minute, especially when we have 100 people trying to submit all at the same time. Yeah. We can, and I wish I could get out more, but I can't. If I don't initiate the check with our community impact coordinator, Jasmine, we can't get the money out the door. So we do the best we can to try to balance the responsibilities we have to meet with you all. We have our board responsibility, committee responsibilities, and to get the money out the door.
So the one thing I would add in terms of relationship building is I was a fundraiser for many, many, many years. You all have databases. I know that you guys can figure out how to send me the appropriate information. And I get a lot of information I should not get via email. I do not need sponsorship information. We do not do sponsorships for events. Please don't send me sponsorship information. Or, I'm getting like individual appeal letters. I should not be getting those sent to Oscar Rennebohm Foundation. Like, you guys can figure that out. Like, I don't need to get that. So I do think thinking about what we are getting and that it's appropriate for us as a foundation, if you guys could save us the burden of not just putting us on a list and sending us everything that you produce, that is super helpful to us. So I would appreciate that if you guys could do that. I think, otherwise, on the other hand, I was just having lunch with somebody that we made a grant to 3 years ago. And it's a very small nonprofit. And she said, you are the only funder who still reaches out to me to stay in touch with me about what's going on with the organization, even though we haven't made a grant in 3 years. But like, I appreciate you like taking the time to find out what's going on and what's going on with our programs and stay in touch with me. Like, we care very much about the nonprofits that we fund and the people who work there and what's going on with them. So, you know, I do think I do a lot of outreach to people so that I can stay in touch with them and find out what's going on. And it's because I want to hear, you know, the challenges that they're having, what the issues are, if there's a grant possibility in the future. Like, I care very much about all of that. So, but those are my kind of two opposite ending comments, but those would be my recommendations.
Sure. Good. We have a couple in the chat here. I'm going to ask you. Somebody asked about how valuable photos or videos are. Like, is that helpful for the ongoing relationship?
Yes, definitely for us at MCF. We may decide to use that in our annual report. We may use it on social media. We may use it in our newsletter. So yes, yes, yes. And pictures are wonderful. I do like a nice video with pictures with permission, high resolution pictures that we could use to further tell your story to our donors and fund holders. That's always a great thing. And we share that with our communications team. So we love it.
Agreed. I love the photos. I put them in presentations or reports that I'm going back to our board. So it's nice for them to have the visual to better understand the work.
I would say the other thing too is that some funders do and don't have social media of some variety. So like, we only have LinkedIn. I mean, I'm a single person staff. And so, so like for Oscar Rennebohm Foundation, we just have a LinkedIn, but if I go to a groundbreaking or something like that, I do post stuff up on our LinkedIn site. So I think in addition to like sending us photos, maybe following us there or reposting stuff related to your organization is helpful to us. Like, we don't have a big fan group of Oscar Rennebohm Foundation on LinkedIn. But it's helpful for us to kind of get the word out that we have a little tiny bit of social media.
You do a good job, Jenny. You do a darn
I was
good
like,
job.
I'm a fan of the Oscar Rennebohm.
I'm a fan too.
Thank God. Thank goodness. My day is so much better now. I feel so appreciative.
So Nick, who works at MCF, also put in the chat that, you know, you guys have this great new technology, but your staff also is learning as people who are applying are learning. So I think that's kind of a theme that I heard in this whole relationship question is your job is just as hard trying to get the money out the door and, you know, making the decisions and working with your boards and staff and getting the money out the door. Like, everybody's busy. So have grace with each other and make sure everything's a two-way street is kind of what I heard there. We have two others that I think I'm going to hold till the end, so we can get to this question about financials, because a couple of those have come up. So this was a big one for me, right? And almost every grant proposal will say, share your program budget, or share your full organization budget, or share your 990, or upload your latest audited financials. Like, I would love to hear like what you're actually looking for in those. I know some organizations want to show a deficit budget to show a need for funding, and others think a deficit budget might look like we don't have our money together. So I would love to hear whatever you could share about what you're actually looking for in the numbers on an application.
Can I just add that a little while back, Imani also asked a question about program budgets that are staff and salaries. So maybe we can also kind of answer that a little bit as part of this question.
Go for it.
So I'll just keep going. So we do like to see a program budget. You know, usually within a program budget, you're showing revenue and expense. And so your revenue may have unfulfilled grants or donations, but it should balance, right? So it may be that you have a line that says like grants or individuals or fundraising or something like that. And it could be that, you know, you have a goal of what you need to raise in that, but you've only raised X so far. So I think there's an appropriate way to show that, to show a balanced budget. You don't need to like show a deficit budget. Like, I think you should show that you're actively fundraising to meet your budgetary needs. I mean, we asked for an organizational budget. I think, again, we just want to look on kind of like program fundraising and administrative expenses is often really what we're looking at, and making sure that none of those are particularly out of line with what is appropriate. So it can be very staff heavy, but it could be programmatically staff heavy. So I think those are the things we're really looking at when we're looking at the programmatic budgets.
Good points. Thank you, Jenny. I will start with business is business, regardless of the business being nonprofit or not. And that's just my personal opinion. I want to see, and my board and committee, we want to see a healthy nonprofit. So we do review. And what does healthy mean? Healthy can mean a lot of different things. Healthy can mean you have a surplus for a rainy day. Healthy could mean you have an endowment. Healthy could mean a lot of different things, and we also know that there's smaller nonprofits too, that are smaller or startups that may not have all this information available. So sometimes just show me a simple profit loss. I want to see something, so we know that the financial side of your work is being handled. We need to have those conversations. And also it has gotten to the point where people are really struggling with submitting a program budget with their grant proposal. So now we actually have put a program budget template on our website that you can download and complete and submit, use it for other grants. Because people were struggling when we asked for programs, they were sending us their whole operations and couldn't make heads or tails, or it's so confusing. We can't figure out what's going on. So we do look at that. We look at fundraising expenses. Like I said, do you have a reserve fund? What do your 990s look like? We do look at those. There was a time when we may not have looked at it as closely, but I think now, because of the need and such a need in the community and money is so tight, we really are looking at that. And those, you can't hide behind it. And of course, we know that you have to spend money to do programs and such. And we just want to be realistic. We want you to be realistic. Downfalls of not having audited. Some don't. Some organizations may not be at that point to hit the threshold for audited financials, and we all understand that. But again, if I could just see a simple, I don't know if it's a QuickBooks, if you reach out to numbers for nonprofits, somebody, anybody, we need to see something, so we know that aspect of the nonprofit is being handled. That was a nice plug, I must say.
I was just going to say, thanks for the shout out there. Maggie, anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm looking, I will go back, I will look at public records for 990s over the past 3 years. I'm looking at revenue versus expenses, right? Is there a trend that I'm seeing? Are you consistently spending more than you're bringing in? Let's have that conversation. So know that I'm looking at that, and that will be a conversation. I'm also just looking at diversification of revenue. How much is federal grants or city or county? So if I can't necessarily get that information, I'm going to be asking you for that. As far as like a program budget, I just want to understand the scope. If your goal is to serve X amount of people or add X amount of program, right? What does that scale look like? And then when you're requesting funding from us, are we funding this entire project? That's going to trigger some sustainability questions. Are we a 10% funder? Who else is engaged with this project? So it just helps me know what questions to ask when I think about that program budget. I will say, I mean, we are also looking at audited financials. Do you have unqualified opinions? I would agree with Angela. We understand that not everyone's going to have an audit, and that's totally fine. But again, have that conversation with us. We don't do an audit. We're not quite at that threshold. Talk to us about that. Like Angela said, we are human. And I would just rather let's have that transparent conversation and make sure that we're all on the same page.
Perfect. Any other comments to the question that was in the chat earlier? So it was, what if there is not a program budget because the program is largely service or staff salary? You
But
still
that's
want
the
to see
program
that
budget.
somehow. That's the
The
budget.
program
That's
budget is the service and staff salary. That's what the program budget is. That's okay.
Right.
Like
Good.
show what it costs to do the program. And if it's 40% of this person's time or 100% of this person's time, that's the program cost.
great. All right, we're gonna skip question 6 because you've had so much good things to say. We're running out of time. So my last kind of question to the panelists, and then hopefully we could take one or two from the audience, is just any advice, any last thoughts, just any piece of advice, or again, I think there's always like this anxiety around applying sometimes. So like, what's something that maybe the nonprofits are overthinking or underestimating while they're out fundraising? Just any sort of last thoughts or advice or encouragement for people out there doing the hard work.
Okay,
like you.
I'll start with that. Think about the reviewer. They may not be familiar with all of the acronyms and such. Use clear language. If we're not the only one, we're not making the decisions. And I think sometimes people think we are. We have community members that are on our boards and committees that are reviewing. Think about someone that has never heard of your organization before. Tell the story. And I'd also say, before you submit your proposal, have someone not associated with your nonprofit read it. Do they understand? Could they explain what your program is about?
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Angela said. My board is the one actually reviewing these. I could be super enthusiastic about what you're doing, but I have a board of 7 people who's actually looking at this. So please know that, part of my job is to gather information and share it the best I can, but that you shouldn't feel anxious about it or have anxiety about it, because the board is kind of looking at where this fits in our mission and with what we're doing right now and among a various other group of proposals. So it's a very wide-ranging decision process.
I will echo that, right? It's my board that's making the decisions. I've been certainly passionate about organizations that I brought forward and they've decided not to fund. The other thing that I will call out though is keep in mind, at the end of the day, we all have the same goal, right? You are in this work because we want to see a more thriving, equitable community. So when you come into that conversation, know that we have that common goal. We're starting on common footing, and lean in with that transparency and trust. I think that's truly what makes the difference with me.
Perfect. Thank you all. I'm going to go up to one question from the chat that I didn't get to, and then we might have time for one or two more. I think this was around impact, but so the question is, I've heard that numbers matter. For example, if we say that 10,000 will fund 2 grants versus 10,000 will help 100 families, do you look largely at how many will be impacted by the funding? Okay, so I've seen this. I don't, and maybe I'm misinterpreting this. Feel free to unmute and jump in, whoever asked this. But so I used to work in a housing agency, and one program might help relatively small number of families, 5 families, but at a really high level, and another program might support 50 families, but at a lower level. And so the question of how many families will this grant support? What are you looking at? What do you have to balance, numbers versus level of impact? And if I'm getting that wrong, jump in, but.
We are muted.
Go
ahead, Jenni.
I would just say that we understand what that problem is, and we make decisions both ways. So we do care if you're asking for a lot of money that maybe a lot of people are served based on what that program is. We understand those complications, and we understand that sometimes mental health work or something else might serve fewer people and be very costly. So we understand those problems. Give us the data. We make good decisions. It's not just about the numbers.
We know that they're apples, oranges, pears, and bananas, so we get it.
Yes, and we want quality, not quantity, all the time. I'll say that particularly with the grant cycle, like a Fund for Women, where there's smaller amounts, and there may be a smaller pool of women that may be served, or a smaller part in a community, a specific community that may be served, but the quality is spot on, and that's okay.
Perfect. This is a general broad question, but any thoughts about providing funding to nonprofits for advocacy, mobilization, or policy change work?
Cool, I love that. MCF, we actually have a director of advocacy, research, and advisor engagement now, and we have dipped our toe in with some advocacy work, supporting, for example, the Knowles Nelson initiative with the state. We've supported that twice. We have supported WICA, Fund for Women has for childcare. So yes, we have dipped our toe in to advocacy, and we're looking to do more as we learn more what the needs are in the community. Allison Kelly, she's gonna tell me. No, she'll be happy to hear from you, but reach out.
I would
If
say
it
that's
fits.
not a fit for us. For advocacy is not a fit for Ask a Rennebohm Foundation.
Same.
Any thoughts on it, even though your particular organizations don't fund that?
I mean, you look at where we are from a landscape perspective, what's the changes from a federal level. I think policy is going to become more important, especially at the state level. So I think it's an important piece. Frankly, I know this is something that a lot of the funders have been talking about in our circles, but it's just not going to be a fit for every foundation.
And I would say we don't fund advocacy, but it doesn't mean that Ask a Rennebohm Foundation itself doesn't do advocacy. So I would say, part of what I do is try to make issues that are going on in our community more visible to elected officials or other funders. And that is something I can do without getting a grant from Ask a Rennebohm Foundation. So like older adults, for example, trying to make that something that our county, our city, our state is paying more attention to. Like that's part of my job, and that I can do.
Perfect. All right, I'm gonna rapid fire just one question at each of you to end here. Let's see. Angela, maybe this one's best for you. Can you talk a little bit about like cross partnership, like collaborations in proposals?
Do you find? Yes. If you say you are working with someone and collaborating, please let that be the truth. We do check. Everyone says they work with MMSD, but do you really? Great
example.
Yes. Do you have a memorandum of understanding? Is this real? We do check those things out. We also know that there can be challenges with collaborations. There are times where we have heard where one board may not get along with another board, or there's some tension, and we don't want to cause more tension or issues. So we don't want to get in the middle of that either. So collaboration is great, and we do encourage it. So you use your best judgment, but please, if you say you're working with someone, let it be true.
That's good advice. Jenni, 30 seconds, thoughts on capital campaigns in general. It's a fairly broad question, but.
We do fund capital campaigns at Ask a Rennebohm. The way we process that right now is we look at the whole list of capital campaigns for that year. We select maybe 3 or 4 that we want to talk to, and then we move forward with that. So it's really, we want people to be a little further along in their campaigns, so we're not committing dollars, so we're not going to pay till 2030. But we do support them, but we're very specific and very selective in the number of campaigns we support.
Got it. And Maggie, this is a fairly specific question, but thoughts in general about funders who would fund strategic plan facilitators that help nonprofits better their impact for the future. So kind of like capacity building, maybe, but outsourced.
There are certainly funders out there. I know we provided some funding for one specific. I know Task or Dan and Patty Rashke Foundation just did something with a lot of the food pantries. So, I know MCF does some capacity building. So there are funders out there that do that. We are well connected as funders. If you're like, hey, help me understand how, who funds this? We can help connect you. So certainly use us as a resource person and to bounce ideas off of, even if it's not a fit for us. I know I'm certainly happy to help you brainstorm.
Perfect. This was amazing. Thank you, Jenni, Angela, and Maggie. Sarah A. from Noble Community Clinics, you're the big gift card winner. Congratulations. Check your email for that. And look at that. 9:01. It was 9 o'clock when I started to say goodbye. But thank you so
Good job.
much. Have a good day.
Thanks all for coming this morning.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good
you.
day.